some plants are like a lot harder to be friends with. They got like thorns and they're, hiding from you or whatever. And calendula is just like, hey,
So true.
hi. And then the calendula is just like so many things. It's anti-inflammatory, but also just really like helping to get the actual healing of the tissues going. And, herbs aren't always that miraculous in their demonstration of their powers, but that was like one of those moments where I was like, wow.
Welcome to the Herbs with Rosalee podcast, a show exploring how herbs heal as medicine, as food, and through nature connection. In this episode, I'm joined by Helena del Pesco to talk about all things calendula, from a surprising encounter with wild Calendula arvensis in Spain, with its dainty yellow blooms and potent aromatics, to the everyday ways this plant supports skin and tissues for healing. If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a thumbs up so more plant lovers can find us, and be sure to stay tuned to the very end for your herbal tidbit.
Welcome to the show, Helena.
Thank you. So glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm so thrilled you're here. I'm really excited to get to know you a bit, hear about your plant path, and you're sharing about one of my very favorite plants. So I'm excited about that too. But before we dive into calendula, I would love to hear about your plant journey and just everything that's led you to being here with us today.
Yeah, I love this part of the podcast when I listen to other people. So I was thinking a lot about what I wanted to say. And I think, I love hearing the ripples like back of like one thing that led to another. And so I'll try not to go too many ripples in, but I was thinking about how my grandparents, especially on my mom's side, who were German Holocaust survivors who came to the US in 1951, were really big influences in terms of just growing up with that story, which is really intense, which is a survival story. And part of that story was my grandfather this is really intense to start out with, sorry, but like my grandfather was in a Siberian work camp. And when he, at the end of the war, when he made his way out, and he was making his way back to Germany to try to, find who survived from his family, he almost starved to death. And some women gave him some chicken livers and that like saved his life. And so that just was like a very powerful, like as a young person, I don't know, 8 or 9, maybe, when I heard that story, like nourishment, and like the power of food and the power of food to heal, the power of a generous act to save someone's life, so that story came up when I was thinking about this, about my herbal journey, even though we don't think of chicken liver as maybe an herb, it is definitely medicine. And then my grandfather, when we had blueberries in particular, like if we left behind the like slightly mushy ones, he would come and eat them. Just this idea of like really cherishing these gifts, And so my parents decided when I was 3 to move to a vegan commune just outside of Nashville called The Farm. And that also, it's funny, berries come up. Like I have memories of, they called us the kid herd. Like there was over half the population was under 18. So literally there were like herds of kids that kind of ran around the woods together, and we would pick berries and bring them back to the moms, and they would make us hand pies. And that's also like a very cherished food memory. That's like pleasure medicine for sure, just like those wild berries. But yeah, growing up, like camping was a really big part of our family. Like pretty much all of our family vacations were camping trips. And at some point, my parents gave me a plant ID book, and I was just sort of obsessed with figuring out which plants were edible, learning how to ID them. And there's actually a story. I'm really lucky to have like 16 hours of recordings with my grandfather that the Wisconsin Historical Society did. And re-listening to them recently, there was a story I hadn't remembered hearing before, that I was hanging out with him and he made me a salad with raw mushrooms in it. I'm from the Midwest. Like raw mushrooms and salad are a thing. Not great, but they're a thing. And I told my grandpa at like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years old, like, I don't eat raw mushrooms. I only eat cooked mushrooms.
Whoa.
And apparently he asked my mom, like, what's up with that? And she was like, oh, she's always wanting to like put things in her mouth when we're walking around. And so to like basically protect me from putting poisonous mushrooms in my mouth, my mom was like, we only eat cooked mushrooms. So yeah, I've always just had this kind of
That's pretty
curiosity.
brilliant. That's a really
Right?
brilliant take.
I know. Smart. She didn't shame me. She
Yeah.
wasn't like, mushrooms are dangerous or scary. But yeah. And so I also have a really strong childhood memory of my 3rd grade public school class in Minneapolis doing like a nature hike where we dissected owl pellets. That's like a very formative memory. But also we learned about like dandelions and sumac. And I went home and I was like, Mom, we have to make dandelion fritters. Of course, they battered and deep fried the dandelions and made the sumac into Kool-Aid, added a lot of sugar to it. But yeah, I was definitely kind of like hooked. And so in terms of herbalism, I mean, I grew up with both of my mom's sisters. My aunts were acupuncturists. So needles, of course, and herbs, but the herbs that they worked with were mostly like compounded, like capsules or pellets or little balls. And so I never really connected that medicine to the plants that I had a connection with as like a person who liked to be out in the woods. And even I think like when you get the bag of the chopped up roots and barks and Chinese medicine that isn't compounded and you boil it and you pour off that decoction, like I had done that, but I still like didn't know those plants out, in the wild. So I think it was really like when I moved to Baltimore, I worked for a fermentation company and some of my coworkers were really into herbalism and were taking classes, a couple of them, one at MUIH, which used to be Thai Sophia in Maryland, and a couple of them at, it was Centra Ache at the time, is now Wild Ginger, Molly Meehan's school, and I know she's been on the podcast too. So I did that program in Southern Maryland, and that was like, I remember just thinking like, this is the best gift I have ever given myself. Like I just felt so like, yeah, it was just another level of getting to be in relationship with plants and other people who cared about plants in the way that I did. And Molly did an amazing job of like, I think it was every other weekend for like 6 months. And she would often teach the Saturday class and then she'd have someone else teach the Sunday class. And so she brought people from all over the Mid-Atlantic. It was very diverse perspectives, diverse student cohort. And so that was amazing. And then I opened a restaurant, which is a whole other story, but I kind of had to put like my active herbalism studies on the back burner. Molly's first year program I did was very folk method. And so I was able to, make a lot of medicine for myself and for friends and family. And then work what I learned into the restaurant that I opened as well. We did a lot of fermentation. We made kombucha and, herbal infusions. So it was there in the restaurant, but, running a restaurant is like all consuming. And I think I kind of consoled myself by thinking like, I'll do this restaurant thing for like, 10, 15, maybe 20 years. And then I will be like in my full witch phase. Like that will be my like final act. It's like getting back into the herbalism. So yeah, the restaurant was going well. And then the pandemic happened. So we opened the restaurant in May of 2019. I was already pretty burned out. And then when, the shutdowns came, it was just like, okay, I reached down inside and found another pocket of reserves that probably shouldn't be tapped, but I tapped it and did that for 2 more years, and then just really was like super burned out. And so I was like, oh, I guess I get to like go back to dedicating myself to herbalism a little sooner than I expected. And yeah, I had heard Guido Masse give a talk, I think, on the Mountain Rose podcast, and I was like totally enamored with his weaving of like folklore and tradition, but also the science. And I was like, can I learn from this person? And that's how I found the Vermont Center for Integrative Herbalism, which he helped found. He doesn't teach there anymore, but Betsy Bancroft and Larkin Bunce, who founded it with him, are still there. So yeah, that pretty much brings us up to today, where I am like still doing a lot with food, more in fermentation, like teaching fermentation. But yeah, fully into the clinical herbalism role.
And you specialize in gut health and nervous system health and kind of the gut-brain axis between them. Yeah.
Yeah, I find that, herbalism is just so vast. And Camille Freeman, actually, I've done some mentoring with her, and she really like recommends kind of choosing a focus early on, which is hard, I think, because we all want to be like, I want to help anyone who needs help. Why would I limit myself? But when you get into like really helping people with complex, health issues, it's a lot of research, like there's no way I can remember, anyone really can remember everything we learn in clinical herb school. It's such a huge info dump. It's so much information. So every client, we end up having to go back to our notes and check our sources and do a lot of matchmaking of like the particular person and the herbs. And so yeah, I really kind of heeded that advice of like starting out with a specialty, like so that I can just feel really, really confident in that gut health zone, has been really great. Yeah.
And it really ties in well with your fermentation love and
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
my one of my first teachers, Michael Tierra, he also said, you need to choose something when you start out. And I was like, oh, it's just so limiting. And I don't want to be limited. And I also don't know if like I want to work with like fibromyalgia or eczema or whatever for the rest of my life, And he says, oh, no. He says, just do it for 6 months and see how it goes. I was like, oh, it was very freeing. Just be like, oh,
Yeah.
take a specialty for a while and just see how it goes. And I loved
Yeah.
that.
It's funny. I feel like as we get older, as I've gotten older, I feel more of that room to breathe of like, somehow when I was in my 20s, it felt like every choice I made was going to be forever,
Yeah.
And so I would like avoid narrowing. And now I realize that, yeah, that freedom in it of just like, yeah, I'm going to be really focused on this for a while and then it can change.
It can change. Yeah. Good perspective.
Yeah.
Well, you have chosen one of my very favorite herbs, one that I'm spending a lot of time with these days because calendula is still blooming in the garden. So still harvesting, still drying. Plus, it's just such a lovely plant to be with. So I'm excited to dive into calendula wherever you would like to start.
Yeah, sure. It's funny. I was kind of doubting myself. I'm like, I know other people have talked about it on the podcast and it is kind of common, but I do really like, well, obviously repetition is not a bad thing because again, there's so much information and hearing about things again, like just deepens it. But I also am like a big proponent of like, let's celebrate the common plants, like let's not just sort of like fetishize the rare plants. And I also got to build a kind of a new relationship with calendula last year because I spent some time in Spain, just north of Barcelona, on this property that had a bunch of wild calendula. So Calendula arvensis versus the officinalis. And I totally fell in love with it. It's just like these dainty little yellow flowers. And then rather than going up, it kind of crawls, sort of like sprawls out a bit. And yeah, so dainty flowers, but like really powerful aromatics, like lots of resin. So I was there in like, I guess it was like the fall. And when I was leaving in December, there were plants going to seed. So I tucked some seeds in my pockets and made it through customs with them. Figured it was like, I don't think there's a risk of this becoming an invasive plant. And so I know lots of people are not seeing video, but just hearing audio, and they're so tiny and so amazing. And so I'll try to like describe them too, but they're just the coolest seeds. They are like lots of different shapes. Like some are really round and some are more like a kind of comma shaped. And then they have these little like hairy spikes on them, almost like a little mohawk. And in preparing for this interview, I was kind of reading more about like what are the theories about why it has such wild, because so many flowers just have like a little demure black round thing or a fluffy, umbrella-like shape. And I don't know any other plant that has this kind of seed. And apparently it's like, is it heteromorphism, I think is the term for like a seed that has variations in shape versus one in the same plant. And part of it, like the rounder ones, like, I don't know if you can see this, but this one's like round, like a little, if you had like a pill bug, like a roly-poly with a spiky mohawk on its back.
Yeah, that's exactly what it looks like.
And apparently that's like, so the spikies help it grab onto like fur and, animals to travel. But then the round helps it kind of roll downhill, roll further away from the parent plant so it can propagate itself. And then the more like comma shaped ones, as they moisten, they kind of straightens out, and that can help them like dig into the soil. Yeah, so it's got a super fun seed. Both the officinalis and the arvensis have that same kind of like fun, kind of alien egg. It reminds me of like something from another planet. Yeah, I was able to grow it in my garden this summer in Maryland, and harvest some. Like I didn't have a big harvest, but I started to make some oil with it. And that's how I've used it a lot, is topically, infused in oil. Although I have been really loving it just like in a tea for like the recipe that I gave you all, this tissue tonic infusion, is I had to go back and remind myself. I'm like, what? Because I've done different variations, I think, of this. So I believe it's calendula, plantain, sage, and marshmallow. Is that the one that I gave you all?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Yeah. So I originally made this for my sinuses. And this is something that Betsy Bancroft introduced us to in one of our medicine making classes, was rather than just doing a straight saline neti pot, to actually do an herbal infusion in a neti pot. And at first I was like, oh no, can we actually do that? Is that, not really meaning to doubt her, because obviously she knows what she's talking about, but something in me, there was a taboo, I think, for me about like putting tea up my nose, it's like, don't put anything up there. And, she emphasized that you want to really like strain it well, put it through like a coffee filter, like not just muslin, but like a coffee filter. So there's no particulates that are going to irritate the sensitive tissues up there. But wow, it really helped so much with, I just had like really inflamed sinuses, like hot inflamed tissue. And I think maybe even I had done a more intense neti pot wash first with like oregano, which was a mistake. I would not recommend oregano.
Yeah.
And it was too hot too, but I was trying to like flush out, it was like, I didn't want to have to use antibiotics, and was worried I was going into sinus infection land. So then I made this to like soothe the irritation I had caused. And now I would like, in the future, I would do thyme instead of oregano. Now I know oregano is like too spicy for the sinuses. But yeah, this just really instantly soothed that like hot, irritated feeling. And the calendula is just so good for actually healing the tissue. So like the marshmallow is like very soothing, cooling, right? And the sage, you have those aromatics to kind of break things up and kind of dilate and open up the airways. And the plantain is so nice in that it's both moistening and astringing. Because sometimes when we have those swollen tissues, they're kind of boggy and we want to actually kind of tighten them up, right? With a little astringing. And then the calendula is just like so many things. It's anti-inflammatory, but also just really like helping to get the actual healing of the tissues going. So after making this for myself, I had a jar of the loose tea sitting around, and a friend was visiting, and we were all hanging out outside, and we came inside, and she had gotten bitten by, I don't know if it was mosquitoes or a fly or what, but she just had this big reaction on her leg, like her side of her knee and her calf. And she was like, wow, it was like red and swelling. And I was like, let me see if this tissue tonic blend would help. So I literally just like put a, thin dishcloth in a bowl, put the herbs in there, poured boiling water over the herbs, let them cool, and then kind of folded that cloth up and put it on her leg, and then like saran wrapped her leg. I was like, I know this might feel crazy that I'm like coating you in saran wrap, but unless you want to sit still for the next 2 to 3 hours, like this is just, you're going to still be able to walk around, but keep these herbs on there. And she took it off a couple hours later, and the skin was like nothing had ever happened. Like no swelling, no redness, no itchiness. And, herbs aren't always that miraculous in their demonstration of their powers, but that was like one of those moments where I was like, wow.
Herbs work.
Yeah, exactly.
So you'd used it for your sinuses specifically, and this was the first time you used it externally? Is that like kind of the
Well,
time?
I had used it in salves, like the oil extraction.
Okay.
And that was one of my very first, I got really excited after learning how to make salves with Molly. And I think I made like a calendula and plantain salve was like one of my first salves that I made. And I made the classic like newbie herbalist mistake where I made like a gallon of calendula oil, like so much calendula oil. For anyone who's wondering why that's a mistake, it's just like, it's expensive and it doesn't last forever. Oil goes rancid. And sometimes starting out with like a little and figuring out how much you need and how much your community needs is better than, But it was really potent and really lovely. And so I'd seen the salve help a lot with skin things. But then at VCIH, I kind of got deeper into energetics and realizing that like salves aren't always great for hot conditions, especially like hot, wet, like hot, damp conditions, because the oil and the wax, although they're great for like hydrating and protecting the skin, they trap the heat and the moisture. So it took me a while to like break out of just wanting to reach for salve for everything, because it's so convenient, right? It's already extracted. It's right there. It's shelf stable. And it's a little more work to like pull out the herbs and boil the water. And, but in certain cases like that, like a bug bite is, like you don't want to trap what's in there, because it's the reason you're reacting is the bug injected something into your skin. So you actually want more of a drawing action rather than a sealing action. And actually, to try to make a more convenient version, I harvested some wild clay from the Northeast River a while back, and it took me years to finally get around to cleaning it, because that's a whole process. But I like cleaned and sterilized the clay and then ground up calendula. This one actually has comfrey and plantain in it. So this is like my bug bite powder now, which is, just mix a little bit of it with water and kind of slather it on to a smaller area. And that makes it more convenient. And the clay adds to that drawing.
Yeah, that's
the
lovely.
drawing action. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I actually also like made a honey, because that was another revelation to me. I was like, wait, honey is actually better than salves on wounds that are like hot and damp, especially if there's a big surface area affected, like a burn. So I infused calendula into honey with plantain. I'm always like putting plantain in skin things because it's so great.
It's
But
fair.
this one also has some rose petal in it, partly just because the roses were there and offering themselves up. And I put them in fresh. So I think it was like dry calendula, dry plantain, but fresh rose. And the nice thing about adding something fresh in honey is that it loosens the honey up a little bit, adds some moisture, which, you don't want to add too much moisture because then the honey ferments more easily, but a little bit of moisture is nice to like, just make it a little bit of a looser, easier to apply thing. So that I used on my husband had a Mohs procedure on his nose. And he had like, a pretty serious wound. And I think after a few days of Aquaphor, he finally let me convince him to put honey on it instead. And it had a really like profound effect on that healing situation too. So
yeah, that's a really good tip for that. Hey, it's Rosalee. Creating this podcast has been one of the most rewarding parts of my herbal work. And if you found something meaningful here, whether it's a new perspective, a favorite recipe, or just a sense of calm, I want to let you know there's a good way to go even deeper. It's called the Podcast Circle. Inside, you'll get access to live classes taught by some of my favorite herbal teachers, behind-the-scenes updates, and a beautiful library of herbal resources that we've gathered over the years. But more than that, it's a space to connect with fellow plant lovers who care about the same things you do. And truly, your membership helps make this podcast possible. It's how we keep the episodes coming and the herbal goodness flowing. So if you're ready to be part of something more, something rooted in connection, head over to herbalpodcastcircle.com. I'd love to see you there. Well, I want to especially highlight this recipe that you shared with us, the tissue tonic infusions. You mentioned it as being great for the sinuses and also using it for the bug bite. And you have the recipe for us, so folks can download that by going to the show notes, getting the link there, or you can go to herbswithrosaliePodcast.com and find it there. But like you mentioned, there's the calendula and the plantain, which is such a fabulous duo. Marshmallow and sage as a really fantastic recipe. And yeah, I don't know if you have anything else to say, but I just want to make sure folks know that they have access to that recipe card.
Yeah, I mean, it also like the most obvious use for it, which we haven't talked about yet, is just drinking it as a tea. And that's something, I do get people asking me often, like, how do you choose between a tea and a tincture? Or like, why would you use a tea instead of a tincture? And there's a lot of different reasons, it can get very nuanced, but I think generally speaking, when we're dealing with tissue, and backing up a little bit, like we think about the human body, like sometimes people talk about thinking of it as a donut, right? Like we have like all the skin on the outside that we're used to thinking of as skin in terms of like skincare products and protecting your skin from the sun. But then there's the donut hole, there's the whole internal hollow tube that runs through us. And that's the same, it's also the epithelial cells, and it also, is a barrier, protects us from pathogens and things, and also absorbs nutrients. So when we are dealing with health issues that are like, even starting at the mouth, whether it's like a mouth ulcer or dry mouth or gum irritation, to a sore throat, to, gastritis, like inflammation of the stomach lining, to small intestine, large intestine, like we probably want to be using tea as a general statement, because we want to be washing the tissues in those herbal constituents. And whereas tinctures often are better suited for like an acute thing, like helping fall asleep or helping with a stress flare up. And this is all like generalizing, but yeah, so I think it's so easy to conflate herbalism with pharmaceuticals, right? Like, oh, I'm just switching, instead of a pill, I'm using a plant. But there are a lot of big important differences, like, pharmaceuticals are very concentrated, and it's kind of like swallowing something that, so I would think of it as almost like detonating in your system or something, like that's not scientifically accurate, but that's kind of like what it feels like. And herbs are like doing more, subtle work. Doesn't mean less powerful, but so I like to think of it as like that bathing, like bathing the tissues. Like, it's not just drinking the tea once a day. It's like making a quart of that tea, making it pretty strong, and then sipping it throughout the day, ideally, like rather than like chugging it all. Hopefully it tastes good enough that you don't feel like you're just like plugging your nose and like getting it over with. But that it's kind of your friend next to you throughout the day, and yes, whatever you're doing. So yeah, and calendula is really great in that respect.
It's lovely. Yeah. Yeah, I like that. Just bathing. We really want to bathe all those digestive tissues, and yeah, lovely.
I had another really like wow moment with a client who was actually a 9-year-old who had been on antibiotics for a respiratory infection and then got gastritis after the antibiotics. And her mom came to me like after like she'd been suffering for like a couple of months and just like was on a PPI, a antacid medication, and it just wasn't helping, and she was really uncomfortable. And it was affecting her mood, it was like being uncomfortable all the time is like, yeah, it's going to make you grumpy. And, I tried to set her expectations realistically. I'm like, well, this has been going on for a long time. It might take a while to see some change. But we did a tea with a similar blend. I think there was some licorice in there, some more anti-inflammatory stuff. And I was like, make it into a lemonade, like add as much honey and lemon as she wants to make it yummy. And she actually took it to school with her in a thermos, which is really adorable. And 4 days later, she was like, I feel great.
Wow.
So again, like doesn't always work that way. And I had to tell myself, I'm like, not always going to be this easy. Don't. But yeah, that's where just, the antacids are okay. They're reducing the amount of acid in the stomach. But if the tissues are irritated already, like those herbs are going to help like calm down that cycle of inflammation that's not serving us anymore. Like inflammation is part of our immune system response, but when it goes on too long or it's kind of misfiring, then it can be causing harm rather than helping us, right?
Yeah. And you really don't want to see anybody, but even someone that young on PPIs, like that's not an ideal situation. Yeah, those are only approved for short-term use and are too often used long-term.
Right? Yeah. I have a friend right now who's just like on PPIs and the doctor's like, yep, just keep taking them. And I'm like, hopefully I can help you figure out how to safely maybe make a different decision. But, that is a tricky territory for us as herbalists. Like, we're not doctors. We aren't allowed to tell people what to do about their medications, but we can give them information to make decisions or to ask their doctors more questions. Because doctors have this authority about them, and a lot of people don't feel empowered to question their doctors. And I think that's actually a kind of lesser known but really important role of herbalists, is to just like help clients advocate with their other healthcare providers for like more information. Like, yeah, it's your body. You know your body better than the doctor does. Like, they know a lot of things you don't know, but they don't know your body as well as you do.
Yeah, it's beautifully said. Was there anything else you'd like to share about calendula?
Oh, I mean, I think like it's such a fun one to grow. Definitely, in terms of accessibility, if you have a pot with some dirt in it or a little piece of land and you can grow some calendula, it's such a sweet, friend to have around. And it does like a lot of sun. I think I've done both direct sowing outdoors and starting it inside, and both have worked well for me. But I was going to say too, like, just thinking about that shifting of the relationship with plants too, that part of herbalism, which can be hard to get to when we're working with clients who are just like, I'm uncomfortable and I want you to help me not be uncomfortable anymore. Which, yes, that's very important. But I also this is an opportunity for me to talk about that side of things, which has been a shift for me too, as much as I have always had so much respect for nature and a deeply passionate feeling about protecting it and not harming the environment. It still was kind of, for me, this sense of like, what are plants good for? What can you get out of them? And being in an herbalist community where a lot of people are trying to kind of bring us back to this place of like, we are cohabitating on this planet with plants. And I like the analogy of like, we just moved in, we have new neighbors. And if every time I saw my neighbor, I just walked by and ignored them. And I never bothered to have a conversation with them or get to know them. And then one day I'm baking and I need sugar, and I just march up to their door and I'm like, give me some sugar. We wouldn't do that. Right. We understand that being in relationship means kind of building slowly, like trust and communication and getting to know each other. And, there's this idea of asking the plants for permission before picking. And I love that. And it's hard because oftentimes I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm super busy. I need to go out in the garden and quickly harvest this calendula before it goes to seed. But it is so much richer, and it's part of the medicine for me and for anyone who decides they want to work with herbs more directly, to get to have a conversation, just be like, stop and notice and be like, and calendulas. So some plants are like a little harder to be friends with. They got like thorns and they're, hiding from you or whatever. And calendula is just like, hey,
so true.
Hi, come on in. It's like such a friendly, welcoming plant and so generous. Like you pick the flowers and more come the next day. Like it just gives and gives and gives. So yeah, I think that's also a really beautiful part of its medicine.
It is. I get that question a lot, or I hear people say like, "Oh, my calendula just started blooming, but I'm not going to pick it because I want, going to wait for more." And it's like, "Oh no, no, no." Yeah, go ask permission, go spread the love. But yeah, the more you harvest, the thicker, more robust that plant will grow, and the more flowers there will be.
Yeah, and it's surprising how quickly it will go to seed too. I think it can be tricky to sometimes it looks like it's still just in flower, but the seeds are kind of starting to form underneath the petals. So I try to even kind of pick it like I want petals, but maybe when it's still a little closed, or because unless you want to collect seeds, which is also fun, the seeds aren't necessarily where the medicine is. So we want that fresh, sticky calyx and petals. Yeah. And I know some people who put the leaves in salads too, it's like a strong flavor, but the tender little leaves can be nice. It's so funny that it's called marigold. I was looking up some research about it, and even a scientific paper, it was about the seeds, and it was like, blah, 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 marigold. And so, yeah, pot marigold is what people sometimes will call the officinalis, right? But even the arvensis, it's like field marigold.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so curious, why? They're both in the Asteraceae family, but calendula is its own genus. And then there's the tagetes, which I think I heard you and a guest talking about a different a marigold plant recently. And I was like, oh, I've always said it tagetes in my head.
Yeah, that
And
was
so
with
now
Lauren.
I'm like,
Yeah.
And I'm like
Well,
shifting. I'm like, oh, Tajides.
I can tell you which one it is if you want to know the proper one. It,
Yeah.
it's the one you say with the most confidence.
Nice. I mean, I'm always open to like, changing the way I pronounce things, but it's funny how when it's been a long time, it's like, it just sounds strange to me. But yeah, I love that. You guys were talking about the Mexican marigold or the Spanish tarragon, I think it's sometimes called. So amazing. Yeah, I guess that's just like it's a good thing for people to kind of, if they're at a plant store and they see a marigold, and it's not the same thing.
I could be wrong on this, but I do feel like it's more European to say the pot marigold.
Okay.
But I could be wrong on that. But that's just kind of my felt sense.
Yeah, it's cool to like know that there's some ways we can work with marigold for medicine and magic. But yeah, that it doesn't have that resinous. The resins aren't there. It's probably like just very different chemistry. And also, I think that's another, in terms of like buying plants or buying seed, maybe even because it is a popular ornamental plant. You want to look for the officinalis or the arvensis if you can find it, because oftentimes when we breed plants for like bigger, showier, more flowers, we inadvertently breed out some of the medicinal constituents. And I think that's potentially the case with calendula. So
yeah, they have started to breed all these different colors of calendula and like various like colors within the same flower kind of calendula. Really pretty stuff. But I had friends grow that and they offered to harvest some for me, and I went to check it out, and just not resinous. It didn't have the same smell, wasn't as resinous. So I got my original seeds from Czech and strictly medicinals, and yeah, they're just so lovely because he's like growing this like especially resinous orange variety, which I love. So I also really love the Calendula arvensis. It's nice that you brought that up as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I might have gotten some of my first seeds from him as well. I wonder if I still have them floating around. Yeah, I have had mixed results planting them, even in the same spot. Like one year they were just like so abundant, and then another year they kind of didn't take, and maybe it was just slightly different weather patterns, not enough sun at the moment that they needed a lot of sun. So yeah, this year I started them indoors. Oh, my camera is shaking because my cat just jumped on the table.
we welcome cats on the show.
Yeah.
Well, I'll give you another opportunity in case there's anything you've missed that you wanted to share about calendula.
Yeah, let's see. I do have some little notes here, but I think we covered a lot of things.
Lovely. Yeah, it has been wonderful. I've been loving hearing about calendula topically, the pairing calendula with plantain a lot. And then of course I always love the direct connection that we can have with these plants and building that relationship. So thank you for sharing that as well.
Of course.
Well, I'd love to hear what kind of projects you have going on. Anything you'd like to share that's going on in Helena's world?
Yeah, well, this is Pekin.
Hi, Pekin. Got a cat visitor.
I just moved back to Northern California, and I'm working at a really cool shop called Preserved that teaches fermentation classes. So I've been teaching there, but I'm also like now managing the workshops. But I just started teaching a gluten-free sourdough class, which I'm really excited about because there's not a lot of good gluten-free sourdough bread out there. I had kind of given up. And then I was in Barcelona and had this amazing bread and befriended the baker, and he let me come work with him a bit. And so it's been really exciting to not just be able to make that bread and eat it, but share it with other people. And then, just starting to expand my capacity to work with clients, which is really exciting, both right now, mostly, virtually over Zoom. Which is kind of how I've been trained to do it at BCIH. But I do now have some space in my new home that eventually I would like to set up to see people in person, just because there's a whole other dynamic to that, to getting to like work with pulses and just share space with people, and maybe even like have them try something during a session, to see how it resonates for them. So yeah, just kind of expanding the client work. Yeah. And
That's
so
lovely. And
Helena
again,
del
you're
Pesco,
focusing. Oh, thank you. Yeah, helenadelpesco.com.
HelenaDelPesco.com is my very simple website that has like 3 things you can do on it, which is sign up for a newsletter, do a free 15-minute, inquiry call, or jump in and fill out an intake form.
Yeah. I went to your website and I loved that it was simple and very clear. So well done on that. Yeah. And again, I just want to repeat that you're really focusing on digestive health and nervous system health and like gut-brain axis, which I think is really fabulous. And
Yeah.
I've always loved to send folks to see an actual practitioner. There's this kind of feeling in the herbal world of kind of DIY, and which, if you have like a bug bite, DIY is pretty cool. You got like a scratchy sore throat from a cold, DIY is really cool. But once you start getting into more complex things, it's just so wonderful to work with someone who has the experience to really guide you through it. And like you said, it's often not like, oh, you just use this one herb. What's this herb good for? Oh, it's good for digestion. Like, it doesn't really work like that. And oftentimes, it's like we do one layer and then another layer emerges. And so things are
Yeah.
evolving. It's not just like here's a quick slap of something. And instead, it's an evolving process and healing process.
Yeah, exactly. There's just so many factors that could contribute to herbs like not working for someone, whether it's like where they're getting the herbs from or how much they're taking, or like what else is going on with their constitution, or even you have to be careful about herb drug interactions, for people who are on medications. Like that's part of our training is the safety piece of being able, like knowing how to look up medications and make sure that, we're not giving people herbs that are going to mess with their medications. So yeah, I agree. It's like, herbalism is by design, like medicine of the people, like grow your own calendula and make your own calendula tea. And that's amazing. But yeah, if you're finding that you have complex things going on and you don't want to, it can be expensive to do the trial and error route, right? Like buy something, it doesn't work, try something else. Oh, wow. It's like, as soon as I'm paying attention to something else, he's like very, very affectionate. But yeah, it's like having someone who's dedicated, themselves to really serious study can really help get you to a good match faster. That's kind of how I think of it. We're like herbal matchmakers.
Herbal matchmakers, absolutely. Well, before you go, Helena, I have one last question for you, and that is, what herbs would you include in your herbal first aid kit?
I think I was supposed to be prepared for this question. Let's see. I'm like so tempted to just be like calendula, plantain, and country. But I mean, honestly,
Fair.
okay, I did in my restaurant, we had some herbs in our first aid kit. And one of them was yarrow. So we had both a dry powdered yarrow in a little vial. But we also had a fresh yarrow plant in a pot outside the front door of the restaurant.
Oh, nice.
And I feel like every restaurant should have that because for anyone who doesn't know, it stops bleeding like instantly. And I got to really test that out early on in my herbal journey. I was in the garden pruning tomato plants, and I accidentally snipped my thumb with my pruners. And, I was bleeding quite a bit, but I really wanted to keep staying in the garden and keep working. So I didn't have yarrow, but one of my neighbors in the community garden did. So I went and like crushed up some leaf until it was juicy, and then like just did this, just like pinched, my thumb, used my pointer finger to pinch the herb onto my thumb and kept pruning with my other hand for another like half hour. And then when I was walking home, I lifted it off, and the bleeding, I never put a Band-Aid on that cut. It just and it healed so fast. So yeah, yarrow for sure. I also learned from someone that if you don't have yarrow around, the inner skin of the layer of onion is also a really great styptic.
Oh,
And
interesting.
that's something most people have around in their kitchens is an onion. So it's just that really thin, papery layer that peels off between onion layers is also good at stopping bleeding. but yeah, yarrow and then comfrey. I mean, it's less so in the like acute first aid sense, but like I have sent comfrey salve to so many friends and family who have, broken a collarbone or a rib or something that can't really be. I mean, even if you have a pin in it, you don't want to use calendula on like deep open wounds because it's so good at healing that it will close up the top of the wound and potentially trap.
And I think
like
you just said calendula, but you meant comfrey.
Comfrey, yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
So like wounds, like we think of this as like a puncture wound, right? Like wounds heal from the deepest part up. And part of what's great about that is that like you're pushing pathogens and things out of that wound as it heals. And comfrey is so good at like helping the body build new tissue that you can kind of like seal in pathogens. So I really try to stick to it with like contusion type things like bruising or like sprained ankles and overused tendons. Like it's just so great at kind of penetrating into the deep tissues that need support.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's a great story about the yarrow with you in the garden too, because that's an herbalist story. It could be a great testimonial for yarrow. When you severely cut yourself but don't want to head in after gardening, try yarrow. You'd be on like a poster.
I was a little like, I think the first time one of my staff cut themselves in the restaurant, I was like so excited. I'm like, we have yarrow in the first aid kit. I think they were like, who is this crazy person who just got like really excited that I cut myself?
Yeah, that's definitely a true sign of an
herbalist. I'm going to show you this magic trick.
Oh, it's been so great hanging out with you, Helena, and Pekin as well.
Yes, Pekin.
So yeah, Pekin. Obviously wishes you were paying full attention to him. So
yes, soon enough.
Well, thank you so much for sharing so much about calendula, for this wonderful recipe, and for your herb first aid kit too. That's very enlightening. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. This podcast has been with me on many long drives. Just so great to be able to like, just kind of browse the plant offerings and hear so many different perspectives. So thank you for doing this. I know it's a lot of work.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure. And having people like you on the show just makes it all the more fun. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
As always, thank you so much for listening. You can download your illustrated recipe card from today's episode. Just head over to herbswithrosaleepodcast.com or check out the show notes for the link. And if you're not already subscribed, I'd love to have you as part of this herbal community so I can deliver even more herbal goodies your way. This podcast is made possible in part by our awesome students. And this week's student spotlight is on Kalua Galikar in North Carolina. Kalua completed the Herbal Energetics course last year, and her reflections throughout the program were detailed, insightful, and full of heart. She connected deeply with each of her plant allies, especially licorice, her chosen herb for the sweet flavor module. In her reflections, Kalua shared that she even invited her son to taste licorice tea with her, explaining that licorice candy was originally made from the plant itself. She wrote into us, "I realized I had a bit of a negative mindset on sweets and was resistant to participating, but as we moved through the lessons, I gained a new appreciation for sweet herbs, especially the adaptogens. That openness to learning and growing truly captures Kalua's spirit." To honor her contributions, Mountain Rose Herbs is sending Kalua a $50 gift certificate to stock up on their incredible selection of organically and sustainably sourced herbal supplies. Thank you so much to Mountain Rose Herbs for supporting our amazing students. Okay, you've made it to the very end of the show, which means you get your gold star and this herbal tidbit. Calendula's orange petals aren't just beautiful, they're nutritive. Their bright hue comes from beta-carotenes, which our bodies can convert into vitamin A. So this is one reason that calendula is such a wonderful herb for skin health. It literally helps feed and rebuild tissues from the inside out. So when we see that sunny glow, we're also seeing the plant's chemistry at work. Thanks for joining. I'll see you in the next episode.